when we look at metabolic balance, I always explain to people there's sort of two sides. We've got these beautiful healthy eating principles, which really, if all of us followed just the principles, we'd feel a lot better. And then we marry that with the personalized food list. But I've definitely had clients where that, adding the element of the personalized food list has been just like exponential results, and it's amazing how that really proves the power of personalized nutrition is so cool.
Hello and welcome to the Metabolic Balance Stories podcast. This is where we share real stories and insights into personalized nutrition and the potential that it has for amazing health. I'm Cherry Wills, I'm your host, and today I am delighted to welcome a fabulous metabolic balance practitioner, Katie King. Hello, Katie.
Hi, Cherry. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
It's wonderful to have you here because you're one of the very first practitioners that I trained when I first took on the management and the training in Australia. So you trained back in 2017.
Yes. So over 7 years ago. Yep, couldn't imagine my practice without metabolic balance.
But let's actually before we go that, could you give us maybe a little bit more of an insight into what brought you into the whole world of natural medicine?
That's a question I haven't been asked for a long time. So I probably always wanted to be in healthcare and I wanted to be a doctor. And I worked really hard at school and got pretty exceptional grades, and I didn't want to travel to do medicine, so I got into physio locally because you couldn't do medicine in Brisbane then. And I did a year of physio and I hated it. And the thing I hated the most was actually being in hospitals. Like, I just hated it. And it took me a few years. I think now I look back and think, how are we supposed to know what we're going to do with our lives at the age of 17? But it took me a few years to kind of work out why I didn't respond to that environment. And I realized that I'd always been interested in health, but more from the perspective of, like, I'd always been into movement and exercise and eating well. I guess it was a bit of a shock to be in a hospital environment around sick people all the time and realizing that pathway was was more about helping very sick people not be quite so sick, but that wellness journey wasn't part of it. So we'd always sort of seen I went off and I ended up studying something different for a while, and then I didn't come back to natural medicine until about 25. And that was when I decided, I want to be either a nutritionist or a naturopath. We'd always seen naturopaths growing up, and we'd also seen conventional doctors as well. But my mum had always been big on just utilizing, both forms of help. Not that we'd been sickly kids or anything. But I loved food. I liked cooking, and I knew in my own self that I had to eat well to feel well. So I went down the nutrition pathway. It took me a few years because I ended up working in natural medicine alongside study, which was good. And then I think I finished my degree not long before I trained in MB, maybe 2 years before I actually trained in MB. And I remember speaking with a rep. I was a little bit frustrated as a practitioner early on because I was finding, I was getting clients and nothing was really working that I'd been taught. Not for everybody, but for some, you would literally try everything with them. Low GI, keto, practitioner grade detoxification programs, intolerance testing, all these sorts of things that we have access to. And for a start, they cost a lot of money for the client, and you want them to get a great result, but sometimes the magic wasn't there. And then a rep pointed me in your direction because I said, I just want I want a food program. I want to know what my clients need to eat to just kind of, unlock that magic where they start to feel really, really good again. And I've always been big on food first. I've never been big on supplements. And she pointed me in your direction and she said, oh, there's this lady called Cherry down in Cleveland and she does some sort of program like that. You should have a chat to her. And then I think I reached out to you, heard about the program, and in my personality style, of course, I was like, oh, yeah, I'll go away and think about it. I think I thought about it for like an hour. And I was like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And, a lot of people hesitate to become MB practitioners at first because I think they want to build up their business. But I was just like, okay, I need this tool now. I want this tool now. And it's only going to enhance my clinic. So I think you put a special training on just for me because, you were just starting to train practitioners and I was ready. So we did it. And then I had 2 people on before Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. Yeah. And you were at the time, you were very, very much, you've already said you love exercise and you love movement and, wellness. And you were pretty active in your own exercise, weren't you? Weren't you a bodybuilder as well at some point?
Yeah, in 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, fitness modeling, which was the worst. I think it's the worst thing you can do for your body, but it was a challenge I took on for a year. That was before I finished my degree and probably didn't realize how bad it was, but yeah, I wouldn't repeat that. But yeah, so I'd always been actually ever since I finished school. So when I was 17, I started teaching aerobics. So I was big in the gym scene. And I taught aerobics because I was studying physio, and physio was 40 hours a week, contact wise. And I couldn't fathom how I could fit in the exercise that I loved and needed to function well and working a job. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just combine them. And so I just went and did my, Cert 3 in fitness back then and some Les Mills stuff. And I taught body pump and cycle and body step and all this kind of stuff. But then I met my partner, my husband now, in 2011, I think. And I'd run a couple of half marathons, just for the challenge over the years. And he was into long distance running. And I mean, 100K, that sort of thing, ultra distance running. And, I remember it was like our 3rd date and he took me to running club and, we ran 13K. This is from someone who doesn't really run that often. And it was hilly on trails. And then he took me to Binnaburra and we hiked from O'Reilly's over to Binnaburra, which is a 21-kilometre hike. And then the next day we hiked back. So I was like, okay, wow, like we've just done, over 52K in 2 days. And just, I guess by osmosis, I got into the running community and I was never fast, but, I ran half a dozen full marathons and I ran a few 50K events on trail, the iconic Ultra Trail Australia in Blue Mountains 50K. During that race, I'd only been really running for about 3 months and I did, like if Carl had answered his phone, I would have called our relationship off. I was in that much pain. But I got through it and I ended up loving it. And then, yeah, like I've run 100K with a few girlfriends, the Oxfam 100K trail walker, which is traditionally a walk, but runners do it. And we actually were the first female team to finish. So, yeah, like running became a part of my life as well.
Yeah. So you are now introduced metabolic balance into your practice and you were attracting clients, were you not, that were very much exercise focused?
Yeah, to an extent. It probably started slowly and not on purpose, but obviously people that I knew through the running community got wind that I was a nutritionist, so naturally they started coming to see me if, for whatever. It might have been digestive complaints or fatigue or that sort of thing. So I guess that then gave me the opportunity to start looking at metabolic balance and whether it could be applied to people with a very active lifestyle. And you had told me at that time that MB in the past had an athletic version, but it had been, removed because it was too difficult to kind of adapt it black and white for a wide variety of sports, which I totally understand.
There's so many different variations, sports possibilities, that it was really difficult to do a very much a structured MB program. But that was really where the coach comes in being able to be the expert to adapt the food list and menu plan to what is needed. And that's really where a lot of your expertise for a few years really came in, didn't it?
Yes, because I think the more experience you have as a metabolic balance coach, you realize that an MB plan is, could be beneficial to absolutely anyone. But whether somebody is going to be able to follow the program exactly to a T, black and white as it is, or whether they just, they need adaptations. That comes down to having experience as a coach, but also just remembering that we are practitioners first with a degree in healthcare and, marrying that knowledge that we have with the wisdom that is metabolic balance.
Yeah, that's exactly the case, and how I see it too. How did you find the results you were getting for your clients with the highly active clients?
I can't remember when I honestly first took my first really active client through MB, but I guess in some ways that would have been me because I did my MB plan pretty early on, probably after Christmas when I trained. And I immediately was aware that I had to alter it to some extent to suit me. So it was very natural for me to tune in and listen to my clients and hear what were their wins and what were their challenges, and then be able to go, well, that's okay, I hear you, let's just alter this a little bit and make it fit better. So for me in particular, when I first did my plan, I felt amazing, like within 4 or 5 days. And I think the biggest benefit I got was just total release of any joint inflammation. I'm not someone who complains of pain. I don't ever get injuries no matter what I do. I'm very lucky like that. I don't stretch very often I'd have a massage once a year. So I'm lucky, but I still there was this inflammation I didn't even know was there, especially in my hips. It just left. Like, it was amazing. And I had a level of, euphoria, I suppose, in those initial stages, which, does come with, that period of lower calorie eating in those early stages where we're not using the fats and oils in particular. But I realized that if I was going to add exercise back in, I would really need to increase the quantities of food from my original plan. That was probably the first thing that I did. And then, even start playing with potentially like an extra, a snack somewhere, or even like a small fourth meal to compensate, on those training days when you're up at, maybe 4 o'clock and, maybe doing 90 minutes of exercise or maybe even more, that 3 meals wasn't necessarily going to cover it. So I guess I was the first active client that I put through the program. And then it just went from there. And I would have to say that, a couple of my close running friends did the program. And definitely the reason why it kind of spread and why I guess I developed a reputation was the inflammatory side. A lot of them they just felt so good and were recovering so much better and feeling lighter too. There's this idea that most athletes are at, they're lean and they're thin, but, most recreational athletes aren't necessarily. Some are putting their bodies under a lot of stress because they're not eating properly and then they're exercising a lot. So some of my early MB clients, shared a little bit of weight. It might have only been 3 or 4 kilograms, but that's a game changer when you're running, 40, 50 plus kilometers a week on a light week sort of thing. So yeah, definitely the inflammatory side of things, like better recovery and that kind of thing, and faster as well. And then obviously finding that ideal body composition helps a lot of athletes.
I suppose what I'm looking at here is that many people who are, naturally active and already focusing on healthy eating, and they have a certain idea of what the type of food they need. They already maybe have read a few things and read some blogs and all that kind of stuff. But MB then truly personalizes it for them. How did you explain it to them, what MB was going to do for them?
Well, I guess what sets MB apart from other sports nutrition recommendations is that most sports nutrition focuses on the numbers, so the macro side of things. So you should be having this many calories and you should be having this much protein and this much carbs and this much fat, etc. And yes, we see the odd recommendation of, okay, your iron requirements are, up to 50% greater in athletes, and various micronutrient statements like that. But the whole concept of eating to minimize inflammation isn't really out there too much in the athletic field. I mean, we see broad brushstrokes or broad discussion around anti-inflammatory eating or anti-inflammatory foods, but it's never really explained to the level of detail that MB goes to. So when an athlete comes in and they're like, wow, you're not only going to tell me sort of how much I should be eating, but you're also going to tell me exactly what foods I need to minimize the inflammation in my body and to get it working really well, to get my engine functioning perfectly. That is a real game changer. And for athletes who tend to be, whether they're recreational or high level, they tend to be quite routine focused. They do what they're told because, they want to get the best out of their sport and themselves. Having that knowledge of what to eat is really powerful. So that's probably more or less how I explain it. And obviously the idea of personalized nutrition is growing, and that the research is there now that says some of these anti-inflammatory foods might not be anti-inflammatory to every individual. We know in nutrition N doesn't equal 1. Like, we could do a research study with, these 200 people and get a completely different result if we applied the same foods to these 200 people, because you're not comparing like with like. Your body and my body are different. And, MB is about going, okay, what's your rebalance foods? What's your anti-inflammatory foods?
Yeah, and I think that is the struggle that many people actually do to get to really understand the difference of just general healthy eating and then that personalized approach. Because I suppose at the end of the day, it's just not really talked about how much the an individual person really responds to different foods. Like you and I, totally different, and we have different goals as well. So, for example, yeah. You call yourself, though, the balanced nutritionist. So you do have a very balanced approach, which I've always loved. I've always loved your approach to eating, because it's not about being perfect, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the whole idea of having a healthy relationship with food is really paramount. And as a nutritionist, it's really hard to walk that line. And, over the years, I mean, I've never had an eating disorder. And I've never had, you know, terrible body image issues either, really. But, I have fluctuated in weight over the years, and I have tried lots of different things. And, probably in my late 20s, I came back to that whole idea of actually, you know what, like, there's no point getting stressed out about all this stuff, because that generally drives the problem. So if we're trying too hard to be really, really perfect with our diet and in all areas of our life, that isn't creating an environment where our bodies are going to be healthy. So I often say to people, look, okay, so you might have had an imperfect meal, or, you might have had a bit of chocolate or something, but you enjoyed it. And it was probably great for your soul. And, the cortisol response you're going to get from beating yourself up is not worth it. Like, just move on. Um, Food is not just, in my opinion, about fuel. And some nutritionists will disagree with me on that statement, but food is family to me, and cooking is an expression of love. So we have to kind of find how we can balance those things. And I mean, I don't have any mental health qualifications in this area, but, I often just say to my clients, look, at the end of the day, when you're eating something that isn't particularly good for you, I'll just say, look, just make sure you still enjoy it an hour later and a day later. So instead of having the whole tub of ice cream, which is going to make you feel sick at 10 p.m. that night and probably feel really horrible the next day, maybe you have 3 or 4 mouthfuls and it's beautiful, and you've had a bit of dessert, but you can go to bed and still sleep without the reflux. So that's kind of my approach to nutrition, and I try to bring that to MB, particularly in that phase 3, phase 4 zone, when we're starting to see people move towards maintenance.
Because that's, I mean, like, we have this, to get the change, to get the results, we have to be focused. I mean, there's kind of, you can't really expect the body to heal if you're not really for a period of time allowing the true healing foods to happen and the healing environment to take place. But for what we need change to happen is not the same as what we need to do when we want to maintain things and have a balanced, happy life as well. It's it's like decorating your house. You don't constantly decorate your house. You decorate your house in order to live happily in it. And that's how I refer to the yeah. So you're explain to us how you see phases 3 and 4.
Phase 4 is the maintenance part of MB, and obviously it is a phase of the program that I do try to focus on with my clients, as opposed to sort of saying, okay, well, you finished MB now, like, congratulations, you've hit your goals, I'll see you later. I try to book my clients in every 3 to 6 months, moving forward. And then if they don't need to see me, they can just email when the appointment comes out and say, oh, I don't actually need this. I'm feeling great. I'm on track. I've got good balance. Let's push it back 3 months. But, what I sort of say to people when we're getting to maintenance is sort of like, remember what you did before, and, what things that you used to do maybe that you really, really miss. Like, maybe it's a cappuccino in the morning, or maybe it's, I don't know, being able to have, like, a couple of squares of dark chocolate at night with your husband and a herbal tea or something. Like, those sorts of things, we look at, well, you know, let's look at building them in. Like, this is not a program that is supposed to be about dire restriction, for the rest of your life. And maintenance is always going to look different for everybody. We see those people who do have, a number of chronic diseases at the same time who come to MB because they are really unwell. So their maintenance may not be as relaxed as somebody like me who's, otherwise healthy but might just be feeling really rubbish or might want to reset or something. For example, I've had two kids now, so at some point I'm going to be able to redo my MB plan and, start putting myself first a little bit more and, get my body working really, really well again instead of being either pregnant or breastfeeding, which has been wonderful, but, I'm going to need to restore myself after that. So maintenance is going to look different for everybody. But yeah, there is, we want people to feel like they can still do life, because if they don't feel like they can still do life, metabolic balance will be something they did at some point in time and they felt amazing, but they couldn't sustain it, just like every other program that's out there.
Yeah, I think that's possibly where I also I like to try and get that message across, that we are always in a certain flow of focus to looking after ourselves and relaxation when we need it. And you don't just do the same thing or every single day for the rest of your life. That's impossible. We want to enjoy birthdays and Christmas and holidays and weekends away with your mates and that kind of stuff. But the middle bit, all the, which actually makes up the most of our time, where we're just going to work and getting up and looking after the kids, you do look after yourself. You do know your new boundaries. You do actually pay attention to what your body needs. And that, to me, is what real maintenance is about.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you can't go to work every day and expect that you can sit down and have, cupcakes in the office day in, day out and feel fantastic. Like, no one's going to feel great having that much sugar every single day. But yeah, the odd occasion, fantastic. And, I think that one of the biggest challenges, it's actually only recently been brought to light for me in a really kind of conceptual way, is when, you're probably you're much the same, Cherry, like you've been a nutritionist for a long time and health has always been a big part of your life. And for people like us, we just eating right, planning our food, maybe getting a bit of exercise in, that it's just a normal part of our mental load, right? I mean, it's normal for me to sit down at night and think, oh, when am I going to get my walk in or my run in? Or what have I got all the ingredients I need to prepare that healthy meal I want to do for my family tomorrow night? Do I have stuff for lunch? Like, it's just normal. But it's really interesting because for a lot of people, that's not normal. Like, they haven't been brought up to be conscious of their food and to actually think about what they're going to eat and think about when they're going to, get that movement in and whatnot. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's all part of helping people change their habits. But I was having this conversation with a client the other day and she just said to me, like, the mental load is really new for me because I now have to be really conscious of what I'm putting on my plate and, how I'm cooking and that kind of thing. And that was so new for this particular client. I just found that really fascinating. And it was great to hear as a practitioner her experience because I'd never actually thought about it like that. That's new to a lot of the people that we see. But on a positive note, the great thing about MB is that as far as preparation time goes and that mental load of planning what to eat, etc., I really think that MB is one of the best programs or the best program you can do and the most easiest program. You know, I have so many clients who say, oh my gosh, this is such an easy program. It takes me no time to prepare my food. I know what I'm supposed to eat, so it's so easy. I don't have to sit there and think, oh my gosh, you know, what's the healthy meal am I going to create tonight? Because it's there for me. So even though the mental load of being healthy can sometimes feel overwhelming, I think MB is great because that mental load is as small as possible, and obviously you're connected with a practitioner for an extended period of time to really support you with those changes and hopefully help you to ingrain the majority of those changes long term.
It's interesting you say about the mental load, that's, you know, we always learn new. Every client you're learning something new from. You're learning a new perspective, a new situation, scenario, and that again is about, you know, being a practitioner is always learning from your clients so that you can help them better. I would kind of think really anything that we're doing differently is a mental load, is it not? I mean, like any new hobby, I do often refer to, you know, when we're trying to get somebody to look after themselves, it's like giving them a new hobby that they've got to learn. They've got to learn the skills and the tips and the tricks and the you know the hacks to make that food prep easier, or when you do this and then you can do that alongside and all this kind of stuff. But I think what you've already alluded to, that with MB, it clears the way so incredibly well that people feel the difference so quickly, and that demonstrates the importance of it within, you know, so clearly. You know, there's no ambiguity really going on, kind of thing. You're like, oh, my food is really making a difference. Okay, maybe there's something in this.
Like they realize it's worth it very easy on, you know, like yes, they might be spending more on their grocery bill, but they're not buying takeaway 3 times a week. Or yes, they might be spending a bit of time prepping food because they're not buying frozen meals, but they have so much more energy and they can do so many more things. So the the benefits are just so worth it. And yes, we do see very fast benefits with metabolic balance, which is great.
So you've been using metabolic balance pretty much in your clinic for the last 7 years, nearly, yeah, over 7 years. And have you got a couple of clients that really, you know, would stand out as, you know, were particularly rewarding to work with?
I think sometimes yes, I do. Sometimes when you think about your clients, you're only thinking about your most current clients. I mean, recently I had some great results with an athlete. You know, smashing races. He was doing mainly sort of half marathon distance, smashing his times. He shed 10 kilos really easily, which he was struggling with. And he was thrilled because he's like, I haven't had to count a single calorie. I'm just eating the right food for me and feeling great. So he was a great success story. I do remember a client from, I think it was before I had my second, which was like last year. I had it, so it must have been 2023. So obviously I've had a couple of little breaks from work, but in 2023, I had a really amazing client. She'd had a car accident, which had been very significant, was in a lot of pain, was on a lot of pain meds, and had gained a lot of weight because she was not able to move very well. And to be honest, when she called me about metabolic balance, I really didn't know if she should. I didn't know how she'd go on the program because they weren't really preparing much of their own food. Like it was quite foreign to her to be preparing food from scratch, I guess. And a lot of things were kind of from a packet. So she was using, you know, like pasta sauces and Gravox and, you know, packets of things. And I thought, wow, like this is going to be, and I'm very honest with people, this is going to be a big change. When I say it's a food only program, it is real whole foods, you know, not from nothing processed. And yeah, she just totally embraced it. And then, like, you know, every appointment just so positive. It wasn't miraculous, immediate change in the pain, but over, 6 to 9 months, she had very significant improvements in her pain, huge improvements in her mobility. She was starting to walk again, things like that. And it was very clear to her that the food accelerated the recovery process exponentially. And, last I heard from that client, they dropped from like a size 28 to sort of a size 14 or something like that. That's huge.
It's the mobility that gives. It's the life you gain back.
And, I think sometimes, there's definitely been times in my career when the power of the personalized food list has really stuck out more times than others, because when we look at metabolic balance, I always explain to people there's sort of two sides. We've got these beautiful healthy eating principles, which really, if all of us followed just the principles, we'd feel a lot better. And then we marry that with the personalized food list. But I've definitely had clients where that, adding the element of the personalized food list has been just like exponential results, and it's amazing how that really proves the power of personalized nutrition. Is so cool. Like clients with endometriosis, I always find respond really well to their own foods from an inflammatory perspective. That's one condition that definitely stands out to me as really benefiting. I mean, everyone benefits from the personalized food list, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I've seen some great things there. Skin stuff, psoriasis, you bring in those foods that work for them, and it can be really powerful when a lot of other, or sometimes everything else that they've tried, doesn't really give them any benefit at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Is there anything else that you would share that you feel is important that somebody knows about metabolic balance? Maybe that you think is a misconception, or that having worked with hundreds of clients over the years and really honed your experience and expertise over the last 7 years. What would you say is something that's really key people should realize?
I think it's interesting that we're at this point in time where there has never been so much information about nutrition available to people at their fingertips. And yet people have never been as confused about what to eat as they are right now. And, I always say, just generally, that when it comes to food, we really have to just cut the noise and work out what works best for our own selves. And that's what metabolic balance is really about. So sometimes it's an unlearning and then a relearning of what works for your own body. And it's also an acceptance that, it doesn't have to be hard or complicated. Because sometimes I feel like people start doing metabolic balance and like, oh, this can't be it. Like, this is just too easy. Like, I'm eating breakfast, lunch, dinner. I'm actually eating fruit. I've got some carbs. Like, why is this working? But it does. So it doesn't have to be really, really hard. It doesn't have to exclude major food groups. Sometimes you might be able to cope with dairy and still feel great. So yeah, I think that's probably my main take home point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's almost a strange world that we live in, that the more information out there, the more confused you can get, the more conflicting ideas. And so much about what we really are talking about is just basic common sense, isn't it, really? 3 meals a day, beautiful water, nice breaks in between, get your sleep, get outside, do some movement and activity, and stick to all your beautiful food. Eat your veggies and stick to your beautiful foods. You don't have to spend any money on expensive supplements and all this kind of stuff. You just cook some beautiful food, and it's the clarity of what we're asking people to do. Katie, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I've always really valued your input in the metabolic balance practitioner community, and just how much you have supported the program over the years. So I do just want to say a big thank you for that as well. It's always wonderful working with you.
Great to grow as an MB practitioner, and definitely, yeah, I couldn't see my practice anywhere near where it is, or being as flexible and being able to have a family as well without MB.
Yeah. It's just the results we get for clients, isn't it? I mean, that's all it is. It's about the results with food. What more as a nutritionist can we want?
Nothing really. Job done.
Job done, indeed. Okay, so if anybody would like to find out more about Katie's practice, thebalancenutritionist.com.au, and there's also notes in the show notes as well. And just want to say again a big thank you for sharing some of your expertise today. And please, if you're interested in metabolic balance wherever you are in the world, please do check out the website, and you can find your local practitioner and get yourself your own personalized plan and see how that can impact your health. Okay, so that we'll leave it there for this time, and we will catch up again soon. Thanks ever so much.